Hey guys, Lumen02. We're going to do a replay of a freeform matchup with this Premodern deck right here. So this is ProsBloom. It has been modified. The sideboard is incomplete at this point in time, so that it's not playing 4 of Vampiric Tutor, which this deck originally did. Additionally, I've taken the Emerald Charm out. So the deck originally had Emerald Charm in place of Diabolic Vision, which I could also see being Limdul's Volt, and 4-buy Vampiric Tutor that are tentatively being replaced by Brainstorm. Well, that may be questionable because I only have 4 fetch capabilities in the deck to include 4 Polluted Deltas. Although it's also a simulated fetch after you Infernal Contract. So the way this deck works, if you're unfamiliar with ProsBloom, it was an old professional deck, one of the first combo decks developed. But the way the deck functions is, typically speaking, you get down to Squandered Resources. This is going to happen as early as turn 3, generally going to be turn 4 or 5. Get down to Squandered Resources and then resolve a Cadaverous Bloom, and generally you want to have at least 1 blue mana floating from this interaction, and then you ideally have Prosperity in your hand as well. Exile the remainder of your hand unless you have counter magic that you need to protect it with. Cast Prosperity for a ton of mana because Cadaverous Bloom, what it does is exile a card from your hand, add 2 black or 2 green. So basically each card in your hand is 2 mana at the end of the day, and you're essentially using it for colorless, although it can become relevant for a couple of spells. So you cast Prosperity, and then at some point, ideally, you're finding Natural Balance, which allows you, because you'll have 0 lands after you sacrifice them with Squandered Resources, making even more mana for Prosperity. You'll be able to Natural Balance and get back 5 lands out of, or find 5 lands out of your deck. They'll come into play untapped. You know, probably not the proper. This is one of the cards that I think helped Magic development in bringing lands in tapped if they're brought in by spells. But you bring in essentially 5 more lands with this. Ideally some blue lands. I tend to find that I like to have islands off of this because islands are a little scarcer in the deck and they're generally essential for casting Prosperity because Cadaverous Bloom cannot fix for Prosperity. After you've cast Prosperity, numerous times, eventually you will find that you have hundreds of mana. Well, you can have up to like 100, 120 mana with the deck, because you can generally mill through the deck pretty fast and find a Drain Life, use the Drain Life with all of the black mana you've been making off Cadaverous Bloom, and then kill your opposition. In the interim, you have both Prosperity and, because this makes black mana, Infernal Contract, which draws 4 cards. You lose half your life, but your life total shouldn't be that relevant. Cadaverous Bloom allows you to gain the life back. So, this is the deck. It probably does want 1 regrowth effect. I think the original deck that was piloted by Mike Long to success in, I believe, 2000 I want to say, Worlds, did have a regrowth effect, but it was a 4 mana regrowth. So this is the deck. I'm going to go through a quick matchup of this in free form, and you guys get to check out kind of how ProsBloom works. So opening hand, this hand is okay. I don't really want to have 2 Undiscovered Paradises, but they do fix for mana. But I'm going to want to have more lands on board. I don't really want to have them bounce back, so I want to utilize them both the same turn that I utilize Squandered Resources, or I don't want to have them bouncing back to my hand the same turn I use Squandered Resources. Just play Swamp, say go. Opponent, Whispers of the Muse. I don't drop my Squandered Resources. I really don't want the land back. I just want to draw lands here. I opt this turn to actually go for a Brainstorm on their end step. They play Scrabbling Claws out. I find 2 lands, put them on top. Go ahead and play the basic land. Play out Squandered Resources, hoping that perhaps it'll get removal from my opponent, because it is kind of a scary card. But I have a secondary one so that I can just continue to develop my mana base and eventually get the second one down and then cast the Cadaverous Bloom. So opponent puts Naturalize underneath an Isochron Scepter, blows up our Squandered Resources. I say, okay, it did its job here. I go ahead and play out another Undiscovered Paradise because I really want to make the blue mana with it. I go ahead and just get rid of my lands that I need to get rid of to double up to cast Cadaverous Bloom. Exile a preponderance of my hand, go ahead and make a bunch of green mana, and then get rid of my lands, making more blue mana and black mana. Natural Balance for a bunch of islands and a swamp and a forest singularly. Go ahead and get rid of all of these lands as well, continuing to make mana. So what Squandered Resources does is basically says double your mana, lose your land. It's basically a slightly more expensive Rain of Filth, but it can make mana of any type that land could produce. So, as you see, I cast Prosperity for the maximum amount, leaving a blue mana in my mana pool because I know it's going to be more difficult to cast a Prosperity if I do not, because I'd be basically relying on Natural Balance to get me there. I do have a Natural Balance in the pool of cards that I get. Keep in mind, Prosperity also makes your opponent draw as well. but they're relatively tapped down, so I think it's pretty safe here. I go ahead and cast another Prosperity here to get enough cards to kill them with, because I didn't quite have enough black mana. Oh, correction, I did. So I do them for exactly 20 there, and win the game. So that's how the deck works. We're at 13 cards, you can see in our deck. So basically, your deck, the whole of your deck is a weapon. That's kind of how this deck functions. Has very limited counter magic options. So opponent knows what we're playing now. I have sideboarded in, I believe, 2 disrupts against their deck because they are showing blue-green. This hand is lacking blue mana, but I think it is on the verge of keepable because it does have squandered resources, and it does have a few great ways of library manipulation if I can find blue mana source here. Opponent compulsive researches, and I'm kind of hoping right now I draw my blue source. Unfortunately, do not. I play forest. I think I probably actually should have played the swamp there, just in case I had to cast Infernal Contract without any support. I do find Natural Balance, which is a great find, so I go ahead and cast out the squandered resources. Opponent think twices. I go ahead and get this down. Sack all of my lands, floating 1 black and 1 green, cast Natural Balance to find 5 additional lands that will come into play untapped here. And 2 are islands, 2 are swamps. I go ahead and resolve an Infernal Contract, find the Cadaverous Bloom that I needed, and if I had not, I found an additional Infernal Contract as well, which I could possibly cast. Go ahead and go ahead and cast floating the 4 blue mana, because I can make infinite, well, not infinite, but I can make as much as I really need black and green mana here. Continue to exile cards out of my hand. I believe I make a mistake. No, I didn't make a mistake this game. I think I made a mistake the first game because I accidentally exiled the Memory Lapse, which I should have kept against the 1 blue mana. I have Disrupt in hand. I don't want to exile that because I do want to leave a minimum of 1 card to deal with a 2 mana counterspell. I actually have to leave 2 blue mana because 1 blue mana is for the Disrupt, the other is for the Prosperity. But I find Natural Balance here, and opponent just goes ahead and packs it in. Regardless, I'm probably overdoing it. I could exile most of the cards in my hand and get very close, at least with this draw, to just killing them with Cadaverous Bloom. So we'll find our lands here, make a bunch of mana with them, Prosperity 1 more time to draw the remainder of the deck, which this hand is going to draw the rest of the deck, and we'll have Mana Drain plus Disrupt available to us to win the game. So that is ProsBloom. Pretty cool deck, definitely very old, but I want to try it out in Premodern because, you know, combo decks have always interested me. Like, this is a little more all-in than I'm used to or generally comfortable with, but the deck is quite powerful. It's quite interesting. It has quite a bit going on, so very interesting deck. If you're ever interested, like, look it up online. It's an old Pro Tour deck that was played quite heavily. I don't know how good it's going to be in Premodern because, again, it's not the most interactive. Like, I had to sideboard into interaction, and I didn't even see, per se, I saw Naturalize out of my opponent. I did not see counter magic, so I don't know how good the deck is in Premodern, but it definitely is cool, and I want to give it a shot because I had the cards around, and hell, it's a fun deck to play at a minimum. Alright guys, enjoy, and take care now.